Good to have you with us on this Super Wednesday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Let's get right to this breaking news this morning in the race for the White House. NBC News has learned that former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley will end her campaign for president. That is according to two sources familiar with Haley's plans.
The news comes after millions of people across the country cast their votes on Super Tuesday. It was a dominating night for former President Donald Trump, who is now the apparent GOP nominee. Haley lost every state except Vermont, which was only her second win in 2024. She also came out on top in the D.C. primary this past weekend. Now, she's set to announce the end of her campaign when she gives remarks at 10 a.m. Eastern in Charleston, South Carolina.
Last night, Trump held a victory party at his Mar-a-Lago club in Florida, saying he's looking forward to the general election.
They tell me, the pundits and otherwise, that there's never been one like this. There's never been anything so conclusive. November 5th is going to go down as the single most important day in the history of our country.
One other primary race of note, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff and Republican Steve Garvey will advance to the general election in the California Senate race. Under California's rules, the top two vote getters advance to the general election no matter their party affiliation. Winner in the fall will take the seat that was held for decades by Senator Dianne Feinstein, who died last September. We have team coverage ahead this morning, recapping Super Tuesday, including NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin, NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray. But let's start with NBC's Ali Vitale in Daniel Island, South Carolina. Ali, good morning. Let's get to that breaking news about Nikki Haley's campaign. What can you tell us?
Hey guys, good morning. Before the sun was even up here in South Carolina, we were able to confirm the news that Nikki Haley later this morning would be ending her bid for president. Of course, it ends after Super Tuesday, which was a difficult night for the Haley campaign. Of course, you also have to imagine that Trump would have liked to have a clean sweep of all these Super Tuesday states, and instead there's Haley notching that win in Vermont. Of course, that is historic in that it makes Haley the first woman to win two Republican primary contests. Initially, she had made history by winning that first one in D.C. over the weekend, but certainly even as she leaves the race, leaving a legacy of history for women to come behind her. But for Haley this morning, I'm told that she is not likely to endorse in this speech that we expect her to give around 10 o'clock in the building behind me. Instead, as one person put it to us, the ball is in Trump's court to win back the voters that Haley had managed to pull to her cause. And I have to tell you, that's probably going to be an uphill climb for the Trump campaign, especially because some of those folks said they're never going to be in the market to vote for Trump.
Ali, walk us through the Trump campaign's night coast to coast. What can we expect to see from him in the coming days? What do you think we'll hear today?
Well, look, you imagine that this is a person who now is sitting there with the nomination well in hand. He no longer has any rivals. It's been clear that that has chagrined him over the course of the last several weeks. Even since leaving South Carolina, he couldn't seem to wait the 2 weeks to actually pivot into a general election posture. That, of course, led to some of the name calling that has become so characteristic of him, focusing on his only rival, Nikki Haley. Haley, for her part, was very critical of the former president, especially in these waning weeks of the campaign, attacking him on everything from his moral fiber on the world stage to his mental fitness. Those are attacks that even if Haley, and as she leaves the race, those attacks are not going anywhere, because for several weeks she provided a real echo chamber for the Biden campaign to amplify the attacks and have it be that it's a Republican. The call coming from inside the GOP House criticizing the former president made it less party line affiliated and much more something that they can try to take into a general election and say, hey, it's not just Democrats saying this stuff about Trump. It's the people who ran against him and served in his administration at one point.
Ali, you mentioned right now we don't expect Haley to have an endorsement. Walk us through sort of the timeline of this from back on that debate stage when everyone put their hands up saying they would to where she might be now, what might be going on in her head as she tries to figure out her next step.
Well, look, guys, here's the problem with a GOP loyalty pledge that is actually just a piece of paper. It's not binding. There's nothing the RNC can do to enforce it. As Haley herself pointed out over the weekend on Meet the Press, she had to sign that pledge to get on the debate stage. I would also note that Trump never signed a pledge like that. And in fact, the only reason the RNC started asking about loyalty pledges is because Trump in 2016, during that primary when I was covering it, was saying that he might not support the nominee if it was anyone other than him. Sound familiar about the way that he's run most of his campaigns? He now has the party forcing themselves to ask other candidates if they would endorse the person who wins, knowing full well that the only reason they're asking that question is because of the guy who is ultimately going to win the nomination. So some real circular logic here at the RNC. But Haley now saying, actually, I'm good. Since the paper's not binding and the debates are over, I'm going to do what I want to do. And very clearly this morning, what she doesn't want to do is endorse Trump.
All right. Ali Vitale, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah, big news. Let's now bring in NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray. Mark, good morning. So what are your big takeaways from last night? What stood out to you as results came in?
It was a dominant performance by Donald Trump in the Super Tuesday states. And by the numbers, Savannah, Trump ended up winning 14 out of the 15 states holding contests last night, with his only loss in the Vermont primary. He ended up winning 94% of the delegates that have been awarded so far on Super Tuesday. And as you end up seeing, his delegate lead before we got the news of Nikki Haley's exit from this contest later this morning, it's about 1,000 delegate lead over Nikki Haley. And so, Nikki Haley ended up telling my colleague Kristen Welker on Meet the Press that she was going to continue to stay in this contest as long as it remained competitive. And I think we got our answer last night on whether this race is competitive or not from those results.
So, Mark, at this point, we know Nikki Haley got 20-30% in some states within the Republican Party. There's some Democrats who are interested in her. There's some independents who are interested in her. Who do you think gets her voters at this point as we move to the general election?
Joe, we ended up getting some clues in the exit poll. It's going to be about half. And what we ended up seeing last night, Donald Trump ended up having a dominant performance among self-described Republicans, conservative voters. Nikki Haley did very well, as we've seen in previous contests, with moderates and liberals, as well as political independents. But there is a clue in the exit poll that we ended up getting last night about who these Nikki Haley voters are. In Virginia, for example, we ended up finding 51% of Nikki Haley's voters said that they approve of President Biden's job performance versus 47% who say they disapprove. That 50-50 split, Joe, I think is a good indication on the people who are going to vote for Joe Biden and who might already be Joe Biden voters before this primary season even began versus those Republicans, and again, about half who are Republicans and that Donald Trump needs to win back.
And then, Mark, let's zero in on former President Trump and talk through his strengths and weaknesses here. What did exit polling tell us?
Yeah, and Savannah, again, the pattern that we ended up seeing last night was that he did so well among conservative and Republican primary voters. And again, those are the bedrock, those are the voters you want to do well in a Republican primary. They make up the bulk of the voters. And as he ended up doing in New Hampshire and Iowa and South Carolina, he ended up doing very well last night in Virginia and North Carolina among those conservatives. Where he didn't do all that well, though, was among the moderates and independents. And again, that has been Nikki Haley's lane in this race. She did very well, and that is an indication of the work he has to do, at least with the Republicans who are open to voting for him come November.
Mark, as we pivot now to the general election, let's touch on President Biden's night. Does his showing give us any more clues about how he might do in November? He didn't have a strong challenger like Nikki Haley, but there were some other people on the ballot. What did we learn?
Yeah, I think we learned that he's cruising to his party's nomination, Joe, and he has faced very little competition, as you ended up mentioning. There were some states where he ended up getting almost all the votes, but there was a contest like in Minnesota, for example, where he ended up getting 70%, and you ended up having uncommitted getting a sizable share of that vote. And also in a contest like America's Samoa, He ended up losing to a no-name person who we'd never even heard of named Jason Palmer last night. But, Joe, I wouldn't give too much credence into the minority of voters who voted against Joe Biden in the Democratic primary in places like Minnesota or even in America, Samoa. Joe Biden has cruised to his party's nomination. The party has decided he's going to be their nominee. We're going to have the general election over the next 8 months now.
Yeah, exactly. Mark Murray, thank you very much.
200 plus days. All right. This morning, there is a major shakeup in a key race that could determine control of the Senate. Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema, an independent who caucuses with Democrats, announced she is not running for re-election.
In a blistering video that she posted on the social media site X, the one-term senator touted her accomplishments while she was in office before blaming her decision not to run again on the current toxic political environment.
These solutions are considered failures, either because they're too much or not nearly enough. It's all or nothing. The outcome, less important than beating the other guy.
NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin joins us now with more. So how much of a surprise is it that Senator Sinema is not going to run again? And where does this leave the Arizona Senate race?
Guys, the timing coming on a Super Tuesday was certainly somewhat of a surprise to those on Capitol Hill, even her colleagues that she worked so closely with. But the fact that she decided not to run is not really a surprise to those of us who have covered her and watched her closely. I was told by sources for some time now that bipartisan border bill that she was working on was really the linchpin to decide, for Sinema to decide whether she's going to continue forward and have something to run on in a state where Democrats have certainly waned in support on her over the last few years. Or whether she's going to bow out because she sees the writing on the wall here. And certainly that is what happened here in this situation. Now, the race is effectively between Republican Kari Lake, who was up on Capitol Hill yesterday and got some key endorsements, told me she has other endorsements coming in coming days, and Democrat Ruben Gallego, who's a member of the House, who certainly has known Sinema for some time. But I did talk to Lake yesterday in the Capitol. Here's what she had to say.
I've always gotten along with her and liked her a lot. We disagree on probably every policy, but that doesn't mean that you can't be friendly with people. And I appreciate a couple of her very strong, courageous votes.
Now, look, Kari Lake has said some very disparaging comments about not only Sinema, but many others, especially when she ran for governor. She's Trump endorsed, but she did say one of the things she fears is the filibuster going away now that Sinema is out. And that is something Senator Manchin, who also voted to protect the filibuster alongside with Sinema, who's also retiring, said to me yesterday. So certainly this will change the dynamics of the Senate. We'll see what happens in that very competitive race.
Julie, let's also not talk about the fight to replace Mitch McConnell as Senate Minority Leader. That was a three-way race, now down to two people. Who's in the running and how's it going?
Yeah, exactly. John Barrasso, who is the current conference chair, he's from Wyoming. The former president wanted him to run for leader. He said he's decided to run for the number 2 position, the whip position, the one who counts the votes. Also very important, but not leader. So that leaves this essentially a two-way race between John Cornyn and John Thune, who is currently the whip, the number 2 position. However, guys, we are like 9 months away from this decision even happening. So it is possible that others could jump in the race. For example, Rick Scott had floated jumping in, Steve Daines, who's currently the guy in charge of electing Senate Republicans into Congress. And so there's a lot that can happen. But right now it is effectively between those two guys. And certainly they're trying to both lock up support.
It's like a reality show, John versus John versus John. As you point out, this isn't going to happen till after the election. So how much could the election and the results, whether Trump wins or loses, whether Republicans take control of the Senate or not, how much could that influence who does end up becoming the Senate leader?
It will absolutely influence that process, guys. We've even seen that in the last couple of weeks. For example, Thune and Cornyn, the two Johns, they both endorsed the former president. Really surprising is Thune, because he said for quite some time that he wasn't planning on doing so. They had a tough relationship, but he really sees the writing on the wall that if this guy's going to become the party's nominee, and if he becomes president, the majority leader in the Senate, certainly, or the minority leader, certainly has to work well with him. So that is going to have some effect there. Also interesting, I asked Kari Lake this question yesterday. yesterday because she was no fan of McConnell. She said she has no opinion as of yet as to who should become leader. Of course, a predictable answer from her, but she did say that key endorsements and those vying to be leader are going to come out in the coming days, and that could be telling because she is aligned with Trump. So certainly we're going to see more of that happen in the coming months. And again, Trump can always put his thumb on the scale, as he's known to have done, and certainly decide a leader that way. But we really have a lot of time, and we have to get through the election first.
Yeah, that little small thing called the general election. Julie Circuit, thank you so much.
200-something days away. All right. Turning now to the war in Gaza, and Hamas says it's pushing ahead with ceasefire talks in Cairo, despite negotiations ending yesterday without a breakthrough.
While the militant group has been locked in talks with international mediators, Israel did not send a delegation. Under the 6-week ceasefire deal that's being discussed, there would be a release of some Israeli hostages and some Palestinian prisoners and an increase in aid to Gaza's starving population.
NBC News international correspondent Molly Hunter joins us on this now. Molly, good morning. So we know there's an urgency to get a deal done before the start of Ramadan specifically. Where do things stand this morning, and what is the Biden administration saying at this point about the talks?
Hey, guys, good morning. Well, we're certainly hearing the urgency from the White House, from Biden administration officials. Take a quick listen to actually what President Biden had to say about it, and I'll talk to you about it on the back end.
It's in the hands of Hamas right now. The Israelis have been cooperating. There's an offer out there that's rational. We don't know what. We'll know in a couple days if it's going to happen. But we need the ceasefire. There's got to be a ceasefire because Ramadan, if we get into a circumstance where this continues through Ramadan, Israel and Jerusalem, again, it could be very, very dangerous. So we're trying hard for that ceasefire.
Ramadan starts on March 10th. That's just a couple of days away, though, guys. As you said, the delegation in Cairo said no agreement had been met yesterday. And Hamas really points the finger at Israel this morning, saying they didn't even bother to send a delegation to Cairo. We are not hearing the same kind of urgency about a ceasefire, about hostage release negotiations, and about reaching that deal from the Israelis as of this morning, guys.
The urgency outside of that seems to be coming from the level of starvation in Gaza, which is why so many people do want to see a ceasefire. Yesterday, a World Food Program aid convoy turned away from entering northern Gaza by Israeli forces. Also yesterday, a damning new report by a group of UN experts accusing Israel of intentionally starving people in Gaza, targeting aid convoys. What more can you tell us about that and how Israel is responding to that?
Yeah, Joe, really, really strong language from those UN experts, which I'll get to, about the WFP aid convoy. You'll remember that last month, WFP, the World Food Program, paused their convoys to the north of Gaza, where aid organizations have said the neediest people, the highest levels of malnutrition and severe starvation are happening right now. They paused those convoys because they could not get those trucks safely in. Well, yesterday, they said a 14-truck convoy was turned back by the Israeli military at the Wadi Gaza checkpoint. Guys, WFP and other aid organizations are also very clear. The only way to avert famine is by getting these huge trucks with tons of aid in. That airdrops and other kind of options being discussed. There's a sea option now on the table being discussed. Those are last resorts. And from that panel yesterday, you guys, really stark language. I just want to read one line to you. From these UN experts, they say Israel has been intentionally starving the Palestinian people in Gaza since October 8th. Now it is targeting civilians seeking humanitarian aid and humanitarian convoys. Israel must end its campaign of starvation and targeting of civilians. And that is a direct quote, really questioning Israel's commitment to international law, guys.
All right. And Molly, Israel's War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz, he's been in the U.S. Meeting with officials over the past few days. What came out of those talks?
Yeah, he has been in the U.S., all very high-level meetings, and really the Biden administration officials have been speaking with one voice. He heard the same message from Secretary of State Blinken, from the Vice President, from the Defense Secretary: get more aid in. Why is there this holdup? Why is Israel putting up obstacles to getting the aid to the people who need it most? And really all signs that the White House is upping their pressure on the Netanyahu government, even though Gantz, it's very clear, was not doing the bidding, was not going because of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Gantz is a member of the War Cabinet. He is an influential voice. He is not the final voice, though. And today, actually, you guys, Gantz is here in London. He's expected to have a meeting with the Foreign Minister, David Cameron. It's expected to be a very tough meeting. The UK, similarly to the US, has also run out of patience. And we heard actually Cameron yesterday use very strong language, kind of previewing his meeting with Gantz today. But the fact that he was in the U.S., now in the UK, it was not through the Netanyahu government, it was not through the Israeli Foreign Ministry, really suggests and really points to the fact that the U.S. and UK are getting exasperated with the lack of aid getting in and with the Netanyahu administration.
All right, Molly Hunter, thank you.
The soggy weather here to stay on the East Coast, plus flood watches for 30 million people stretching from New Jersey to Massachusetts.
Angie Lastman is here with the latest on the forecast. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Umbrellas are needed across mainly the eastern third of the country, and we've already had a busy morning so far. We had a line of showers and thunderstorms working through South Florida. That is moving out, but still some leftover lingering rain. Really heavy rain centered across parts of the southeast through the early morning hours today. Places like Atlanta already picking up a couple inches of rain, even up until now, and more on the way here as we look from the mid-Atlantic over to the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee valleys. That's where we've already been soggy across this region for the better part of the morning hours. And you can see it's been pretty quiet across the Northeast so far. That's going to change here as the day goes on. This moisture is going to start to lift up into that region, and we'll be dealing with some busy conditions, especially along the I-95 corridor here as we get into that really important commute time. We've got some alerts up already, 30 million people included in those. New York, Hartford, Boston, all included, with those major cities being impacted by the potential for some flash flooding here as we get through the day today. And you can see why. Plenty of moisture going to lift into the area. We've got the chance for some impressive rainfall rates. We're talking 1 to 2 inches per hour, potentially up to 3 inches per hour. Short period of time, prolonged rain. Not hard for us to see some flooding, especially in those more vulnerable areas that we oftentimes see the flooding, the urban areas. Here's the deal as far as this evening. You can see this rain is still going to be around here even well past the afternoon commute. Well into the evening, we'll still be dealing with the rain. Boston, New York, Washington, D.C., into portions of Virginia. That'll be something that we have to watch for. And the moderate to heavy rain is going to be basically Virginia to Maine. Now, tomorrow, if you're looking ahead, this rain will stick around for the first half of the day for some locations. It'll linger across parts of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, and then eventually move out. That system moves offshore, and we'll be looking better, but not before we deal with some of that early kind of rain for the first half of the day. We'll see some drier conditions behind that, and we'll get some major improvements. Now, rainfall totals anywhere from another 1 to 2 inches up to 3 inches across the southeast. Possible to see some flooding across that region, guys. And the flash flooding is going to be something we continue to see the potential here across the northeast, not just today, but into tomorrow, too.
All right. Umbrellas. I still got it.
Yep, good. I forgot mine today, so what does that say?
I usually do,
We
but
can
today
share
I
if
had
you
it.
would like. All right.
Angie, thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.